Okay, so I think we're up to the new parak. I believe we're up to the new parak, right? Okay, so let's get started. Misha Hayanasui Shteinashim. Someone who was married to two wives. Umeis Harishayna Kaidemes Lishnia. The first wife died, and then the second wife died. The Harishayna. Misha Hayanasui Shteinashim. Umeis Harishayna Kaidemes Lishnia. So I didn't touch this good at all. Very, in fact, I see I'm too tired. I'm too tired. It's if it's a Meisher Rishayna, then Kaidemis Lashnia. No, so that's mamish. I read it like a Chinese. Meisher Nashdeshim Umeis, comma. That's what I slept for 10 minutes last night. So I apologize. Yeah, Meisher Nashdeshim Umeis, comma. Harishayna Kaidemis Lashnia. The first wife has kedima to collect their ksuba before the second wife. And should they both die? So Rashi says, first he died, and the chiyuv ksuba was triggered to each of his wives. Then they died. So the Yarsha Rishayna had first rights to the estate before the Yarsha Shniya. Nasa Sarishayna Umesa. What happens if he married the first one and the first one died in his lifetime? And then, so if the first wife died in his lifetime, he has no chiyuv to pay the ksuba, but there's still the halacha of ksubas b'nin different. Meaning, eventually, when he dies, the amount of money that she brought in to her ksuba, her children will inherit before they split up the assets. And Nasa Shniya, he married a second woman, Umeis who, and then he died, so that now the second wife is claiming her ksuba. So the law is shniya v'yarsha koydem v'yarsha rishon. First, she gets to collect her ksuba, or if she's no longer alive, her yorshim collect her ksuba, and then whatever is left over then goes to the yorshim, and then the yarsha rishona will split the pot with the Yarisha Yashniya, like the regular Yusha, whatever is remaining after the Chayv is paid, after the Ksuba is paid, is split. Once again, there's going to be Ksubas B'ndichrin involved.
Why is Yarisha Shniya before Yarisha?
Because the Yarisha Shniya are collecting Ksuba that he owes to his wife. So before his estate is all Meshubah to pay that Ksuba. So first the estate has to pay the Ksuba, and then whatever's left is Yerusha.
He already paid the Ksuba.
The Rishon, he didn't have to pay her ksuba because she died before him. So he only has to give those assets to Torish Yerusha, to her children. But before he can give any assets to Torish Yerusha, he first has to pay up all his chayvis, including the ksuba that he owes to her. Zok to Gemara. Midikatani harishayna kaidemes l'shniya. It doesn't say the Rishayna gets and the Shniya doesn't get. It says the Rishayna gets, but she's in an earlier position than the Shniya. V'loy katani harishayna yeshla, v'ashniya eina. It doesn't say that the Shniya doesn't get it at all. Michlal, that tells us, the kadma Shniya, the tavsa, loy mafkina mina. It doesn't say that the Shniya doesn't have rights. The Shniya also has rights to her ksuba, except the Rishayna, her claim comes first. Therefore, since the Shniya does have a claim, therefore, if she was toifus from the nechosim of her late husband before the Rishayna had a chance to, we let her keep it. Because Rashi says, Kaidemis is lechatchila. Lechatchila, she should have first rights. But with the evid, if she was toifus, we'll let her keep what she was toifus. Shemamino. Now, when you have two wives, you have two almonas of someone who died, really, they're like a regular balchoy. His estate owes the first wife the money for her ksuba, and his estate owes the second wife the money for her ksuba. So you have two balchoyves. And the Mishnah is saying that if the later balchoy is toifus, the later balchoy can keep what they were toifus. So that should apply to a balchoy as well. So shemamino balchoy me'ucher shekadem v'gova. You have Reuven who lent Shimon money in January, and Levi lent Shimon money in February. Who has first rights to collect from Shimon? Reuben does, because Reuben's loan predates the loan that Levi gave to Shimon. Nevertheless, if Levi goes and chaps some nechasim from Shimon, he'll be able to keep it. Zok the Gemara, no, you don't have such a right. You don't have such a right from our Mishnah. Let's say in our Mishnah, Mashagova Loigov, if the second wife is Toifis Nechasim to fulfill her ksuba, we'll take it away from her. What's the Lashon Kodemis? Kodemis is mashma that b'di eved, if the second wife is Toifis, it would be a good tfisa. So what's the Lashon Kodemis if you're saying that it's not a good tfisa? Legamri, Katani, it means legamri. It means, Dr. Rashi, she'ein l'shniya klum. Don't say Kodemis is a Lashon of the first wife has first rights, but the second wife has second rights. No, the first wife is Kodemis and the second wife has no rights at all. Kedetnan, like we learned. Now, I had to make something very clear. I apologize, I didn't make it clear right away. Of course, this is speaking where there's not enough money to pay both ksubas. Avad, if there's enough money to pay both ksubas, everybody gets paid. Kedetnan, like it says in the Mishnah, Ben koidem labas. When it says Ben Yarshin before a daughter, does that mean that if the daughter chaps, she'll get it? Avadana. It means the son is a Yerush and the daughter is not a Yerush. So you see, the word koidim doesn't necessarily mean they're in the first position, but if someone's toifus, it'll work. Sometimes koidim means absolute, that it all belongs to the son, nothing belongs to the daughter. So too in our Mishnah, you could learn that when it says Harishayna Kodemis L'Shniya, it means the Rishon is entitled to be paid and the Shniya not. Ikad Amri, there was another way this sugya happened, and the story came from the completely opposite side. Since the Mishnah didn't speak out that if the Shniya made a tfisa, we don't take it away from her, Michlal, the Kadma Shniya v'tafsa mafkinamina. So we bring back exactly the opposite. You see from our Mishnah that if the Shniya try taking, you will remove it, you will take it away from her. So Shemami know the opposite. That Bachayv Mu'ucha Shekadim V'Gava, Mashagava Loigava. If the second Bachayv is Toifis, and there's not enough to pay back the first Bachayv, we will take away from the second Bachayv what he was Toifis. Zakamar, you don't have a raya. Loilam Emalach Mashagava Gava. Adi Ditana, Shnia V'Yarsheh, Koidmin, Liyarshe Harishayna. In the Sefer of the Mishnah, it says Shnia V'Yarsheh, Koidmin Liyarshe Harishayna. So really, Koidmin would be mashma. Really, from you could be medayik, be'etzem, that you take it away. But the word Koidmin is lav dafkin the Reisha, because it only used the word Koidim because it was used in the Sefer. Since it used such a lashon in the Sefer, the Tana wanted to keep the lashon parallel. Tananami Reishayna kedamis l'shniya, but there's no raya from there. And therefore, the Gemara says that from our Mishnah, it's no raya whether or not if a lachayv shniya is toivus before the balachayv rishon is paid off, if the balachayv shniya can keep it or not, and who then it's a shaila if the second wife, the wife who we married later, if she was toivus, it's a shaila whether or not she gets to keep it. Right? But the Gemara doesn't come on my over here. Right? We don't have a right either way. Okay, Zok the Gemara weiter. Nasar Sharishain. So let's review this case. Nasar Sharishain, he married one wife, okay, and then she died. So if she died, there's no claim of ksuba, but there is a claim of ksubas bin dichrin. After he dies, whatever she brought into the marriage, her children should get, right? And then Nasar Shniya Umeisu. Now that he married a second wife and he died, which means the second wife is already coming, mitaris b'choy, mitaris money the ksuba, surely she has first rights, and exactly that's what the Mishnah says, shniya v'resha kodim liyarsha rishon.
Kesubos they get it's like Mr. in Basel, or it's Mr. Miller. So it doesn't belong to the husband, or what's the look?
It's all of the assets that the Benin Dichrin are going to get belong 100% to the husband because he yarshined his wife. So it doesn't matter if it was Malugah or Basel, everything he yarshins. Because if she dies, he yarshins her. Allah is a man yarshins his wife. If a woman dies,
and has to pay the
she's dead.
Then does he have to pay
He doesn't pay anybody anything. It's all his. It's all kindness. It's his.
No, so
If he dies, when he dies, eventually, when he dies,
yeah.
the chaylik that he yarshin from her, he has to give bedavka to her children. Nishters and andere kinder.
So this has to be a choiv, or this has
No.
to be a yiddish?
You're not asking. You're asking a very good kasha. You're asking a very good kasha, a very good chayla, because the Gemara is going to actually address it, but it is a yiddish. It's not a chayla.
So it's yiddish from the father. It's yiddish from the mother.
It's a yiddish from the father. So that's an important point you're bringing up. It's a Yerusha from the father, and therefore it's only payable after Alas Chayvus. There's actually two conditions that we're going to. After Alas Chayvus are paid up, and if there's at least one mana that can be distributed equally amongst all the Yerusha. So there has to be something that you could follow the halachos of Yerusha for, because this Kesubos ben Dichrin is the Rabbanon being mevatel the rules of Yerusha. Right? Really, it's supposed all of his assets should be split evenly amongst his Yerusha. The Chachamim are being mevatel the Hilchos Yerusha should be the Raisa. So therefore, they'll only do it if there's some assets left where you can follow the real halachos Yerusha the Raisa. If there's some left, then you can give each side what their mother brought into the marriage. But if not, then everything gets split evenly.
Kesubos ben Dichrin isn't just a choiv that he takes.
No, and the Gemara is going to address
It's
that.
also a drabun, no? Think as if
Kesubos ben Dichrin is a drabun.
Bal Yoirish is not a dress, it's a drabun.
No, it's nice. It's a pasuk. The Gemara doesn't have a pasuk. We are Shaisa. So we learn it from pasuk. It's right. It's not the Hill Gemara. Nasa es harishayim. Shmami natlas. From this Mishnah, we learn three important halachas. First halacha we learn is Shmami na achas bechayev v'achas b'moisai. One of his wives died while he was still alive. The second wife died after he died. Yesh lehen Kesubos ben Dichrin. There's still a din Kesubos. There's still a halacha of Kesubos ben Dichrin. Because I would have thought that there's no din Kesubos ben Dichrin. Why not? Let's think about it. What's going to happen is the Yarsha Shniya are going to take. They're going to take half or whatever is part of their mother Ksuba they get. Al right? Now the Yarsha Rishona, they're going to want. Let's say there's after they take their chayv. Let's say there's not enough for the Yarsha Shniya, because the Kesubos ben Dichrin is going to give all of the rest of the money to the Yarsha Rishona. Kim Techos, the Yarsha Shniya aren't going to get any Yerisha. So they're going to get Sakrik, there's going to be a whole fight. So maybe Chazal didn't make Kesubos ben Dichrin in such a case, where there's going to be a fight. So Shmamina, that Avad Yidu said, Shmamina, that Achas B'chai V'achas B'moisoi, Yesh Lan Kesubos ben Dichrin, V'loi Chayshinan Li'insuyi. And we're not worried that there's going to be a fight that the Yarsha Shni are going to say, hey, we don't get any Yerusha from our father because you paid us a ksuba and now Yerusha, there's nothing left for us. You're taking it because they don't get B'din Dichrin anymore because they got their mother's payout already. So they're going to be upset that they're not yashing their father. Why shouldn't I yash my father too? Mimai, how do you know that we're not worried?
See that B'din Dichrin is different. You see it as part of the estate.
It is part of the estate, and you're talking up all the
It's the
Yerusha,
mother's original knowledge.
but it's still Yerusha. So it could lead to a fight.
But then the Chachamim loichashem don't see maybe as a kick in the cycle they're going to see us as yes.
No, I think there was plenty andere Sachen that you must fight. Bedarfst du nicht geben date herz. Mimai, how do you see this from the Mishnah? Mit the katani shniya v'yarsha koidim yarsha rishayna. It says that the shniya v'yarsha are in the first position to take from the assets because she's claiming her ksuba. Mikdam hu de kadmi. She only has first position. Ha'ika, but if after the ksuba of the second wife is fully paid up, if there are still assets there, shakli, they'll be able to take. So that's the first halacha that you could be medayik from our Mishnah. Item number one. Item number two. Ushmami na ksuba nasis moiser l'chaberto. Now we're assuming here that once the shniya takes the ksuba, there's only enough left to give the other children their ksubas b'din dichrin, but there'll be no other money left at all. That's the assumption. So ushmami no ksuba nasis moisher l'chavita. The problem is we know there's a rule that you don't say ksubas b'din dichrin unless there's some Yerusha left over with which we can follow the Hilchos Yerusha of the Torah. Over here, you didn't have that because after she took her ksuba, there's not a penny left besides the ksubas b'nedichrin. So there, maybe the ksubas b'nedichrin should be bottled because there's nothing extra with which to follow the halachas of Yerusha. Zok the Gemara, paying off a chayv, that's also called following the proper Yerusha. So since he paid off the ksuba with his assets, that's enough that the ksubas b'nedichrin will still be triggered. So shmamino ksuba nasis moisher lechavita. The ksuba is considered the moisture. It's considered leftover after the ksubas b'nedichrin. So therefore, we still follow the ksubas b'nedichrin. Mimai, where do you see that from? Midaloi katani. Since the Mishnah doesn't say im yeshem moisher dinner, it just says that the shniya is kedamas l'rishayna. It doesn't say the shniya has to be kedamas l'rishayna and there has to be moisher dinner for the rishayna to take. If there's anything left after the ksuba, whatever is left goes to the rishayna. So you see clearly that you say ksubas b'nedichrin, even though there's no money to distribute to the regular Yerusha, because we consider the fact that the ksuba, the chayv got paid up, that's called also the regular Yerusha. Okay.
No different than any other.
I'm sorry?
No different than any other place.
Right, but who said a chayv counts? Maybe there actually has to be some asset that gets split evenly between the two parties.
See the chayv is following the rules.
Well, this is what we have the raya from our Mishnah from. That's right. Ushmamina, and we learn a third thing from our Mishnah that ksubas benin dichrin loitar from mishabdi. So this is what Chaim was referring to. You see from here that the right of ksubas benin dichrin is only al Yerusha. It absolutely has no position when there's a chayfer. So since there's a chayfer, meaning there's a chiyah for him to pay the ksuba of the shniya, that's completely before anyone even talks about Yerusha. If they also have a right, let them take it. Who said that the shniya should claim her ksuba? Let the Rishona claim their Yerusha first. So you see clearly that they could only get their Yerusha after the shniya is fully paid. And this is where Rashi addresses specifically what Chaim brought up. So if you look at Rashi, loy tarfei mishabdi, is because the lashon of the ksuba is hein yarsun. They should yarsh me. So if Rashi the loy tema yasvuntnan, it doesn't say they should get. Keilu, it's a matuna from the father that's going to the children. And if it's a matuna, it's machayim, and maybe then it'll go before. Maybe then it should go before paying off the ksuba because he's giving it to them before, and therefore ubal choiv havui. Then they'll have a din of a choiv because he had given it to them. Vishibudim koidom, and maybe their shibud should be before the ksuba, which only gets triggered after he dies, and therefore v'yitrafu mibnei yishniya. They should come first to take before the bnei shniya take her ksuba. Shehein ba'choivos muchared, because the chiyah for the shniya only came after the chiyah for the rishona. So they're a ba'choiv in an earlier position. Ela yarshin the yarshin tnan. The lashon is the yarshin. They don't get. It makes a difference. One letter makes a big difference. Instead of a resh, it could be a base, and it will be flipped. Ela yarshin tan the lagav mishapi. Once they're yarshim, then their position is all the way to end. After all the balachoiv are paid up, only then whatever's remaining they'll get the Yerush. So that's the third halacha that we learned. Maskav Rashi, we're going to slug up all your three rayas from our Mishnah. You don't have any raya to anything from our Mishnah. Mimai, Dilma la'olamei malach. Let's say that really achas b'chayav, b'achas b'moisoi, ein len ksubas b'nindichon. Really, there's no ksubas b'nindichon. Our Mishnah says beferish that there is. Umay koidnimin lenachla. When it says koidmin, it means koidnim lenachla. What does that mean, Dr. Rashi? Umay koidmin, the mashma ha'ikemide lemishkal basrayu shaklu. It's mashma that after the shniya takes the ksuba, if there's something remaining, it's mashma that the rishona gets. So you see there is a din ksubas b'nindichon. So tomorrow means koidnim lenachla. It doesn't mean that the Rishonim now gets first rights to the leftover Yerusha als Ksubas b'nindichon. No. After the Shnir takes the Ksuba, then you split the rest of the assets 50-50 between all the children, evenly. So how do you see from our Mishnah that what's occurring after the Shnir takes the Ksuba is that the Ksubas b'nindichon? Doesn't say that. It just says the Yerush. So maybe the Yerush like any other child. You take all the assets, you take all the children, and you divide the assets by the children evenly. It doesn't say anywhere that they're getting kedima to the assets that their mother brought into the marriage. So your first raya is Augustlon. You might ask me, what do you mean? It says the Yershe Rishona. There's nothing to team with the Rishona. They're just Yershim of the man. They're all equal brothers, Yershim of the father. And the Lashon Mishnah is the Yershe Rishona get. So clearly the Yershe Rishona must be referring to the special Yerusha they get because they're a son of the Rishona, and that's the Kesubos Benediction. So the Chitema Yershe Rishona Lamali, that's not a kasha. The Tana Shniya, the Yersheh, since it says that the second wife and the Yershim collect first, Tananamali Yershe Rishona. But it doesn't really mean that it's Kesubos Benediction. They'll split it all evenly. Okay, so we slugged up your first raya that Achas b'Moisei, Achas b'Chayov, that there's a din Kesubos Benediction, and you don't have a raya. Now let's get to the second one. With the Ka'arvet Ksuba Nasas Moisei L'Chaverta, and that you said, that the fact that the Kesubos paid, even if there's no other assets, you'll still say Kesubos Benediction because that's called doing something al pi the halacha of Yerusha. That's also not a raya. Dilma la'olam emalach ain't Ksuba Nasas Moisei L'Chaverta. Our Mishnah happens to be speaking in a case, we're making a kimta, dinner. It happens to be that our Mishnah is Moshe dinner. It doesn't mention that. Just mind this, that there's an extra dinner there. In it, so besides the fact that the Shnia got all her money for a ksuba, there was enough for the Kesubos Benediction and one extra dinner. So in fact, there's a dinner that you can split evenly amongst all the children. Okay? Dinner. So the Gemara slugs up, these two things, not all three. Now the Gemara says, it happens to be that this shaila, as to whether or not Chazal were Mesaken Kesubos Benediction when the two wives, one of them is only B'Yerusha, and one of them is taking it, but there's Ksuba, whether or not Chazal saw the need to make the Kesubos Benediction in that case, or they were worried about a fight, that's a machlokes tonight. The Tanya we learned, Mesu Achas B'Chayv.
What's the original Kesubos Benediction?
But that's the question. Does it include such a case, or it's only if both of the women died in his lifetime? Right? So now it's all Yiddish. So Zok the Gemara, the Tanya, Mesu Achas B'Chayv, V'Achas B'Moisei. What if one of his wives died when he was alive, and one after he died, which is exactly the case of our Mishnah? Ben Nana Soimer, Yecholin B'nei HaRishoina, Loimer L'Bnei HaShniya. The B'nei HaRishoina could tell the B'nei HaShniya, Atem, B'nei Balas Choiv, Atem, you're the sons of the Balas Choiv, meaning the Ksuba. The Ksuba is like a Choiv. You're the children of the Bal Choiv of our father. Tulu Ksubas Imchim, take the Ksuba of your mother, Utsahu, and get out of here. Take what you're owed, and then get out of here. We don't know what that means exactly yet. Rabbi Kiva says,
the word B'nai Shnei means the mother's children that are not the father's children?
there are also the father's children as well. Yeah. It's also the father's children as well.
So why, what's the Havman that they should say, why?
Well, I don't even know what this means yet.
Okay.
We'll see Rabbi Kiva, and then we'll figure out what this means. Rabbi Kiva Omer, no. Kfarkovsa nachla milefnei b'nei harishona v'nafal lefnei b'nei hashniya. So the Tanakama holds that the Shniya get the Ksuba, and everything else goes to the Rishona. Rabbi Kiva says, once the Shniya get their hands over here on this Yerusha, on the estate, because they're taking it to Ksuba, they get everything. They even get the Nachla first. Let's see Rashi. Rashi says as follows. Atem b'nei, I'm in the second wide line. Atem b'nei balas choiv. Atem tlu ksubas imchem v'tzeyu. Al korchach of Rashi b'deleka moiser dina kamari. This must be speaking where there's no moiser diner, and therefore maybe there won't be a din of ksubas b'nedichin. Midekatani yutzu, take it and go. So vastachos, there's nothing else left for them because everything else we want, because that's going to be part of our Kesubos B'Nichrin. There's an extra Moshe dinner, we can't throw you out because that extra dinner has to be split evenly. So Vastachos, there was nothing there. If there was extra money on top of the Kesubos, Mayu Tzu, the Karmilu. What's up is they're throwing them out. Nihinami the Shakli B'nei Rishon Kesubos B'Nichrin. Yes, they get the Kesubos B'Nichrin, but whatever's left over, Sha'ira, Mia Palki, the rest should be split evenly amongst all the sons. Elo B'Deleka. It's got to be speaking where there's just enough money for the Ksuba and the B'Nichrin and not an extra penny. So this is what the B'nei Rishona are telling the B'nei Ashniya. Atem B'nei Balas Choyvatem. You are the children of someone who's owed as a Balchoy from the estate. Uksubas Imchem. Hoyel V'choyfi. Since the Ksuba of your mother is not Yerusha, it's a Choyv that the estate owes her. Ve'enchem boim b'Torah B'Nichrin. You're not coming to Mon that al B'Nichrin. You're coming to Mon al Balchoy. Therefore, loy ba'in Moshe Diner. You don't need to have Moshe Diner. The ein lach nachlo deraisa yofa mizu. There's no better nachlo deraisa sha'anu va'atem pairin choivas avinu. We are paying up. We don't need an extra dinner in order to make the din Kesubos B'Nichrin. Because the fact that as a group we're paying up a choiv that my father owed your mother because that was the chiv ksuba, that's enough that all the rest can already go to Kesubos B'Nichrin. Hilchach v'reber, Telu oisa, you take the choiv, and with that we're both mekayim, the deraisa of what should be done with the father's assets. Utsu, now get out of here. Because v'anu nito al hashar b'Kesubos B'Nichrin, and all the rest will remain by us. All the rest will remain by us al Kesubos B'Nichrin. That's right. And Rabbi Kiva says, Rabbi Kiva Kfar Kov Tanachla, Misha Shemei Sabal B'Chayah Shel Shniya. As soon as the husband died, while the second wife was still alive, and the Chiv Ksuba was triggered, Kavtza Nachlas B'Nichrin Milafnei B'nei Harishon. Once there's a Chiv to pay a Ksuba, automatically the Chiv of Kesubos B'Nichrin evaporates. Why does it evaporate? It evaporates because we're saying the Chachamim weren't masakin it. V'nafla liyos nachla kishar Yerusha af lebnei ashniya. We're mevatel the halacha of Kesubos B'Nichrin once there's a choiv paid to them, and there's no more din Kesubos B'Nichrin, and therefore the rest of the estate will be split evenly amongst all the sons. Vafilu hava hacha moiser dinner. Even if there was extra money here, nevertheless, have a shakli b'nei rishoyna Kesubos B'Nichrin. There's no halacha of Kesubos B'Nichrin anymore. The ba'achas b'chaya, ba'achas b'moisha lo yiskin. Chazal never said that there's Kesubos B'Nichrin when one group of children are taking it b'torah's choiv, the Torah is paying off the ksuba, and the other group of children are taking it out Yerusha. There's no such thing Kesubos B'Nichrin in such a case because there's going to be fights, right? So that is the machlokes that the Gemara is quoting between Rabbi Kiva and the Tanakama. Do you say Kesubos B'Nichrin when one set of children are not getting it al Yerusha, they're getting it because of a choiv that the father owed the mother for her ksuba. Zok to Gemara, maskif law. Zok to Gemara. I'm not sure where I'm up to. So Zok my love, b'hakamifli.
3 lines from the bottom.
No, not that far. Oh yeah, much of you. All right. Okay, my love, b'hakamifli. The Mar Sover achas b'chaya b'achas b'moisoi yeshlen Kesubos B'Nichrin. The first time that holds that in the case of achas b'chaya b'achas b'moisoi, which is precisely this case, there's still enough Kesubos B'Nichrin. That's why the Rishonim tells the Shniya, take your ksuba and get out of here. We're getting all the rest. Umar Sover, what Rabbi Kiva holds, achas b'chaya b'achas b'moisoi ain't lahem Kesubos B'Nichrin. There's no din Kesubos B'Nichrin, and the rest of the estate is split evenly. Omar Rava said. So we brought up machlokes tanoim whether or not you say achas b'chaya b'achas b'moisoi they didn't have Kesubos B'Nichrin. Omar Rav ashkes chesinu l'Rabbanon tvei Rav. I met the Rabbanon tvei Rav. The Yosy the Karmi. They were saying the following: the kula alma achas b'chaya b'achas b'moisoi yeshlam Kesubos B'Nichrin. Really, Sai Rabbi Kiva and Sai Tanakama holds there isn't Kesubos B'Nichrin. So then, what is the machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and the Tanakama about? V'hacha b'ksuba nasis moiser l'chaverta. Here the shaila is not the shaila of Achas B'chai v'Achas B'Moisei, which was the first shaila we discussed, but it's actually the second shaila that we discussed. If there's no extra money at all, can the fact that the ksuba was paid off be the part of the Yerusha that we say you were Makayim, you didn't deraisa, and therefore the rest can be ksubas b'nedichin. My sover ksuba nasis Moshe l'chavata, which would be the Tanakama, and that's where the Bnei Rishonim say that we have a right to keep the rest of the Yerusha after you're paid up for our ksubas b'nedichin. My sover Rebbe Kiva holds ain't ksuba nasis Moshe l'chavata. You don't say that. And therefore, after we take our ksuba, you don't get ksubas b'nedichin anymore. Now we split all the rest amongst all the children. So that's what the Rav told Rabbah. And I said, no. If it's a question of paying off a third party, not a ksuba, everybody would agree that releases, and therefore that releases the Yerusha Deraisa, and therefore the rest of the money you can give bedafka to the B'nin Dichrin. Keep ligi, the whole machlokes here is only b'ksuba by a case of ksuba. So Rashi gives a little bit of an explanation. Zokt Rashi b'bal choiv. I'm about 10 lines from the bottom towards the end of the line. B'bal choiv kula amalei pligi dav muter dav moiser. Why? Hoyel v'ashtar yotzal kulam. Since this star is making them all equally liable, they're all liable to pay a third party money. Nimtzu kulam parim. Everybody's paying. And that would be the nachla deraisa that they have. But they're all paying.
So I would feel that the nachla is the mitzvah, not the geld. The mitzvah, das was gegaat is gis. Im Aufsehen not das ist trash.
Yeah.
I was thinking that.
Keep ligi b'ksuba. But there's a machlokes b'ksuba, ba'achas b'chaya, ba'achas b'moisoi, shashniya choifi. There's a machlokes pligi. Benanas holds harezu kishar choif have a moiser. What's the difference if it's a choif to a third party or if it's a choif to one of the parties? That's called moiser. That's called doing the mitzvahs prius choif aviem, and therefore the rest can be left to ksubas b'nedichin. Rabbi Kiva's over lav kishar choif domi. It's not like any other choif. Even the inu gufayu koshakli, since they themselves are taking it, the hilchach, and therefore hanach b'nei shnia mikabel v'loy parim. The b'nei shnia, no, they're not part of paying off their father's slave. They're taking it. Nimtza she'ein kan nachal deraisa. Come to Chayz, there's no nachal deraisa. L'loi iskin Yerushas b'nin dichrin derabanan l'me'eka nachal deraisa. Okay, so the question is since we're also the Baal Chayv, we're the Baal Chayv, we're basically paying ourselves. We're taking it out of one pocket, putting it in the next pocket. Is that called that we were Makai Nitzer? You're laughing. I'm going to tell you a very personal story that happened with somebody in my life. Somebody who died and he owed money to people here in Toronto. Someone died and he owed people money here in Toronto, and he had a claim on somebody else's assets that was a very schwache claim. So the people who he owed money after he died decided that they have to fight for his rights and fight for the rights of the deceased to get the money that he's entitled to because he has to pay his chayvus, and we want to help his neshama, we want to pay his chayvus. And then we found out that who were the recipients? These guys, these two shronzen who made such a big deal that they want to help this huge neshama, we've got to pay his chayvus. They made me sugar, they impoverished people to get money out of so many different people that was shvacha claim. And then who were the chayvus? Themselves, in their pocket of that. Gewaltig. Zog the Gemara. I would say who it was, but it's every Kippur. Tomorrow it's an Altishkirei. The Eilen Neutlen, Ksuba Simon. Zog the Gemara weiter. I got mixed up over here. Where are we at?
Up to the left.
Maskal Rosh. Ihachi. You have to stop in 10 minutes, I think, right? 6:40. Okay, so 6:35. So we're talking. So Maskal Rosh. Ihachi doesn't make sense. If this is pshat in the machlokes, Rabbi Kiva's expression doesn't make sense. Rabbi Kiva Omer kfar kovtza nachla. What do you mean kfar kovtza nachla? The moment there is a claim on the ksuba, automatically there's no din ksubas b'nei dichrin. That's not true. The way you want to say now is normally, even though the ksuba is put up, there would be ksuba from different. The whole problem is that it's not called moiser dinner. So what Rabbi Kiva should have said was, "Im yesh moiser dinner mi boil." Rabbi Kiva said, "For kaf nachla across the board, no matter how much money they're talking about." But if you're telling me the machloikas is only about if the payment of the ksuba is considered the moiser dinner to allow the rest to go to ksuba spinadichrin, that's what Rabbi Kiva should have said. Elamar Rabbi Yosef, "Ba'achas b'chayev, ba'achas b'moiser kamifli." The machloikas must be what we first said. It's about whether or not you b'chalal say ksuba spinadichrin when one of the sets of children are claiming it Matoris Ksuba, not Matoris Yerusha. And this Machloikis Tanoim that we brought between Benanas and Rebbe Kiva is also argued by another set of Tanoim, the Tanya. Nosas Rishayna Umeisa, and then Nosas Ashnia Umeisu. Boin Boneh Shalzu Lachamisa. The children of the second wife can come after Misa, the Noitling Ksuba Simon, and they can take the Ksuba of their mother. Rabbi Shimon says, "Im yesh moiser dinner." If after they took the ksuba of their mother, there's still an extra dinner, then edlu noitlim ksubas iman, and the edlu noitlim ksubas iman, and the bnei rishayna can also take al ksubas b'nindichrin ksubas iman. But v'imlav, but there was no moiser dinner, then cholkin b'shavet. Then all the assets remaining after the ksuba is taken get split evenly. My love, what is the machloek between Rav Shimon and Tanakama? The Ma'as over Achas B'chai V'Achas B'Moisoi Yesh Lan Ksubas B'Dichrin B'Nindichrin U'Ma'as over Achas B'chai V'Achas B'Moisoi Ein Lahem Ksubas B'Nindichrin. Let's say that's what the machloek is about. Rav Shimon holds that there's no din Ksubas B'Nindichrin if there's a Ksuba taken, and the Tanakama holds there still is a din Ksubas B'Nindichrin. So you don't have a raya that that's what they're arguing about. You can say differently. The Chula Ma'achas B'chai V'Achas B'Moisoi Yesh Lan Ksubas B'Nindichrin. Right.
Why is this first one take
The ksuba elu noiten ksubas iman is the shniya, and then the elu noiten ksubas iman would be the rishayna. It means the ksubas b'nindichrin. Yeah, it means ksubas b'nindichrin. Yeah. Okay, gewaltig. Okay, so we have over here is the Tanakama said that the Shniya takes, and Rabbi Shimon said they both take, right? So we want to say, let's say the Machlokes is whether Achas B'Chayav, Achas B'Moisai is, you still have a Din Shabbos B'Nichrin, so you don't have a Raya. Maybe the Chula Alma holds Achas B'Chayav, Achas B'Moisai, Yesh Lam Ksubas B'Nichrin. So in our case, why is the Tanakama saying that there's no Ksubas B'Nichrin? The Hacha, in our case, the reason why the Tanakama says there's no Ksubas B'Nichrin is bedinner mekakri kamivically. Let's say they're arguing about something completely different. Let's say they're arguing about if there's a moiser dinner, but the moiser dinner is not an extra dinner worth of property, of karka, of real estate. It's extra cash. And maybe the halacha that the Rabbanan said, in order to have moiser dinner, in order to have ksubas b'nindichin, you have to have a moiser dinner. Maybe that means only if there's actually property worth a dinner that can be split evenly. But if it's just cash or other metalton, it wouldn't be good. So maybe the halacha b'dinner makarka kamifuli. Marsav makarka in metaltaliloy. So the Tanakama holds that only the shniya get, not the rishayna, because there's no din subas b'nindichrin, because there's no land available that can be split evenly. Umarsav or afilu metaltli. Now Shimon knows no, you still say subas b'nindichrin because if there's a moiser dinner, even if metalton, that's good enough. You cannot possibly learn pshat in the machlokes between Rav Shimon and the Rabbanan, like we said, that it's a question of that there really was a moisher dinner, but it was cash or some other asset, it wasn't karka. You cannot say that's the machlokes. Because if you're saying that, what are we saying? We're saying that the Tanakama holds no din ksubas b'nindichrin, and Rav Shimon holds there is a din ksubas b'nindichrin, even though we don't have land to split up. The problem is Rabbi Shimon doesn't say that. But now Rabbi Shimon Omer, afilu yesham nechasim she'ein la machrayis. Rabbi Shimon specifically said that even if there's extra assets, but it's not karka, it's metaltlin, ein on klum. That's useless. Legabe the ksubas b'nindichrin ad she'esham nechasim she'esh la machrayis. Yes, sir. I'll base ksubas dinner. There has to be enough karka to cover both of the ksubas and one extra dinner that the karka can be split evenly according to the Hilchos Yerusha. So we wanted to learn that Reb Shimon was the one who holds that there would be the Kesubos B'Nedichrin, and we wanted to say it's because there was no Kesubos Karka, there was no Karka left, there was only Metaltlin. Reb Shimon Befer says that if there's Metaltlin, it wouldn't work. So this is not a good shot in the Machlokes Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan. So let's try another shot in the Machlokes between Reb Shimon and the Rabbanan. Elahacha b'diner mishabdik community. The way Rashi learns is that there was no assets. There was no assets left to split evenly. But someone owed the father who died, someone owed him money. So there is money coming to them, but it's not in the estate right now. But it's coming to them because someone owes them money. Well, there could be karka that's meshubah, but there's nothing here now. There's only a choy. Someone owed the father money. Someone owes the father money. That's money. You can pay it up with money. That's right. So al-hacha b'dinim mishabdi community. Mar sover b'bnei chayrin in mimishabdi loy. One madama holds, which would be the Tanakama holds, that unless there's actually karka in the estate, live, not that's owed, that we cannot say ksubas but indifferent. And Reb Shimon holds with Mar sover afilu mimishabdi, that would still be good enough to be considered that we have money that we can split up in Yerusha, and you could still do the din ksubas but indifferent.
If there's not that you need karka, that's the most solid asset we should do. I feel if there's cash, how as you can't do it. So you ask me. We already
know. Reb Shimon says cash wouldn't work. How could this shibud be better than cash? Maybe because it's a shibud on karka. Maybe a shibud on karka is good. That's a very good point. How could a shibud on karka be better than cash? But that's what the Gemara slugs it up anyway. You're right. The Gemara is going to slug it up anyway. In fact, Reb Shimon Noimer im yesham moiser dinner. Reb Shimon is basically being maker. Reb Shimon is saying even where the Chacham say there's no din ksubas b'nedichrin, I'll still allow a ksubas b'nedichrin. So Reb Shimon seems to say he needs more qualifications than a Chacham. Because Reb Shimon said im yesham moiser dinner. If you have that, then it'll be good. What he should have said was kivon sheyesham moiser dinner miboylei. If he wanted to be makel over the Tanakama and say, you hold this is not good enough, I hold it is good, what he should have said, since there's a moisture dinner, even though it's through a shibud, that's good enough. So it's obvious from the way Reb Shimon expressed himself is that he's going to be more makbid. If he'll be less likely to apply the halacha of ksubas b'nedichrin. And so far, the way we described it, Reb Shimon was going to be more likely to allow the ksubas b'nedichrin. But those aren't the wordings of Reb Shimon. Zok to Gemara, Ella, let's say they're arguing b'pachas midinner committed. Let's say they're arguing where there was less than a dinner. There was something extra to split evenly, but it wasn't a dinner. Mar sover dinner in pachas midinner loy, umar sover afilu pachas midinner. In fact, Gemara, you cannot say that because of Reb Shimon dinner kamar. Reb Shimon's wording is not over here in the Brisa, but in the next Mishnah, where the Gemara brings down the same machlokes. So the second to the last line of the Mishnah says, Reb Shimon Omer, afilu yeshem nechas v'nil lachayis enim klum, ad yeshem nechasam sheyesh lo machayis yosher al shtei ksubas dinner. So he says, beferish, you need to have a dinner. Okay, I think we're going to have to stop here because it's already 5 minutes of slichus, and I wanted to finish at least this kasha, but kafal, we'll have to do this on Yom Kippur. So we're going to learn Yom Kippur, B'ez Hashem, an hour before Mincha. I'm not sure exactly. It's a middle, and we'll learn Matzah Yom Kippur an hour after 72. So let's look at that good loop. The good loop says, let me see if I can find it. Okay, I'm going to open up the. I don't know if it's in here. Zman for Yom Kippur here. No, I don't have Zman for Kippur on Vayelach.
You open the loop or just the cover?
I've opened the loop.
Yeah, it's there.
It's in the loop for Vayelach.
Yeah.
It was there.
Yeah, but it'll be in the schedule of the week.
You want to look again?
Scroll down to Wednesday.
Okay, on Wednesday, on Yom Kippurim,
Yeah.
Mincha is 4:40. Mincha is 4:40. So at 3:40 we'll learn Daf Tzadik Aleph. Yeah, you'll still be able to code him. But Motzei Yom Tov for Rabbeinu Tam is 8:03. So 9:03 we'll learn again. And then the day after Yom Kippur the day after Yom Kippur, it's the same time. We'll go back to 6 o'clock.
Back to normal.
Yeah. Okay, shkoyach boys, have a good bench dior. Gemar chasim toive. Amen. Amen. Shkoyach.